Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T. To my bed crimers, hi, how you doing? Hope you're having a great day. To anyone new here, a warm welcome. Thank you for checking out my channel. Let me just ask that after listening to or watching the video, if you find you enjoyed it or learned something, do me a favor, smash that like button and consider subscribing. Also, if you appreciate my work, please consider supporting the channel with a Patreon membership. Now, let's dig in. Any woman who's ever been stalked by a violent ex-partner who doesn't want to be an ex knows the 24/7 fear that can lead to. An LA sex therapist who was once a Playboy model was murdered in her Hollywood Hills home in the early morning hours of February 15th, 2020. And her ex-boyfriend, a guy she'd broken up with 8 years earlier, is the suspected perpetrator.
While my partner's out, I like to wake up in my cute little lingerie and, start sexting them. Because I was so out.
Sexting, first of all, can be either verbal or visual.
I think a lot of people are doing it to keep their love lives active. There's that anticipation aspect to it, the back and forth exchange. It's sexy. Who doesn't like hearing or seeing something sexual about somebody that they're interested in?
80% of women are like, don't send me a picture. And then it's the size queens are like, yeah, send me a picture, Is there something about sexting that annoys me? Yes, it doesn't happen enough in my life. Other than that girl who sends me pictures of her boobs. Those are really good boobs, though. They're not finding any profile of the sexter. It seems to cut across many ages. It cuts across ethnic backgrounds. It cuts across everything.
Right now we have things like Snapchat, Tinder. Anytime the technology is available, people use it for sexuality.
That gorgeous, raven-haired beauty talking in the popular online documentary titled Addicted to Sexting was LA sex therapist Amie Harwick. Harwick worked out of an office on Santa Monica Boulevard and offered therapy at $200 a session. At the age of 38, Amie's beautiful life was cut short, allegedly at the hands of a former boyfriend. Her suspected killer is the now 45-year-old Gareth Pursehouse, who is currently on trial for her death and for burglarizing her residence. So when we talk about Gareth Pursehouse, until the jury's verdict comes in, it is with the word allegedly. However, a verdict in the trial is expected this upcoming week. This bed crime story begins in 2011, when Amie and Gareth began dating. Things were good in the beginning, but over time, Gareth became physically and emotionally abusive. After Amie breaks up with Gareth in 2012, she feels the need to get 2 restraining orders against him, fearing he will harm her. Post the breakup, Amie goes on to become a famous marriage and family therapist who by 2020 was volunteering her therapy services for workers in the adult entertainment industry. She also writes a book called The New Sex Bible for Women that garners a lot of attention. 2 years earlier, she'd been engaged to The Price is Right host Drew Carey before the couple called it off. However, they remained friends post the split. Amie was a superstar in every which way, and her career was on a straight line up to the stars. Nothing was going to hold her back. With fame came money, allowing her to buy a 3-story home in the Hollywood Hills, replete with a balcony off the 3rd floor bedroom. Think Romeo and Juliet. She ended up getting a male roommate who lived on the ground floor. In January of 2020, Amie attends a fancy red carpet ex-biz award show hosted by Stormy Daniels. at the Marriott Hotel in LA. Harwick attends with a male colleague named Dr. Hernando Chavez. Both Amie and Hernando were excited to network at the event. Amie was invited because she had worked for a charity that provided mental health therapy to people in the industry. Very happy to be at the Tony event, Amie is all smiles to begin with. But as chance would have it, Gareth Pursehouse is there too. A full-time IT worker, Pursehouse's side gig is as a photographer. On this night, his job is to take photos of people on the red carpet. When Gareth sees beautiful Amie with her signature red lipstick, raven locks, sexy black dress, he can't believe his luck. He goes right over to chat her up. At first, Gareth is pleasant, but when he tries to get her to agree to meet privately to talk about their breakup 8 years earlier, and Amie declines, he turns vicious. In front of Amie's colleague and anyone else within earshot, Gareth spits out, "You ruined my life, biatch." Sorry, YouTube doesn't like that word, so I always try to kind of say it in a funny way. Can you imagine? They've been broken up for 8 years, and still this dude is not over it. It's like he's feeling rejected by her, and perhaps that rejection has been amplified by seeing how successful she's become. He, on the other hand, is still having to work multiple jobs to pay the rent. Amie begins to cry. Not only is she very upset about Gareth's nasty accusation, she's also embarrassed to have all these strangers witnessing the whole lurid affair. She moves away from Gareth with her colleague, but of course, Mr. Obsessive, allegedly, isn't gonna drop it. He approaches her again a short time later. She tries to appease him. She speaks to him very calmly, but she also doesn't mince words. She tells him she sees no point in getting together for a chat. She doesn't think it would be productive. Gareth, as you can probably guess, is not happy with her refusal. After the encounters with Gareth, Amie is no longer her happy self. Although she smiles when necessary, it's obvious to her colleague that she is deeply troubled by the encounters with this ex. She and the colleague go to a restaurant after the event, and Amie tells him all about Gareth and why she has very good reason to be afraid of him. Early the next morning, Amie writes herself an email documenting what happened to her at the event. In it, she calls Gareth, quote, "obsessive and scary." Here's part of the email. "I was scared and felt like I needed to neutralize the situation. I didn't think he was going to attack me in that moment, but this clearly shows me how obsessed he was. He told me that he thinks about me every day, and every day he cries. He told me he lost his job when we broke up because he couldn't work. He told me that no matter what he did, he couldn't stop obsessing over me. He told me that I was a cheater and a liar because he thought we were still together when I believed that we were broken up. He recited text messages that I had sent from the time frame about 9 years ago. He recited the date, who they were to, and exactly what was said word for word. I couldn't believe it. I was very scared. He said he wasn't able to move on, but he's dated, but nobody like me. He said he thinks about me constantly." End quote. Amie's now worried about being followed by this nut job. Concerned about security at her home, she has new locks put on all the windows and has a handyman install security cameras. She also buys herself some pepper spray, but probably what she really needs is a taser, a firearm, and a big German Shepherd. And she's right to be concerned. It appears the chance encounter has stirred an obsessive rage within Gareth, at least according to the prosecutors trying him for murder at this time. According to the prosecutors, after their encounter at the event, Gareth finds Amie's new phone number and he texts her. After a brief text chat, he asks once again to speak with her further. In one of those texts, Gareth writes, "I have a lot to say. Please give me a chance to say it. Can we meet again? I wish I could do something more. Please, please, end quote. Amie declines. She also tells Gareth that their conversation at the event was all that was needed, and she tells him to stop contacting her. But now that Gareth has her phone number, he keeps on texting her, and he begins calling her as well. In one phone call, he leaves a crying voicemail. He's clearly unhinged and unstable, allegedly. Amie blocks his number. On Friday, February 14th of 2020, so Valentine's Day, at 7 p.m., Amie leaves her home to head downtown to meet up with some girlfriends. At 7:10 p.m., as Amie is headed downtown, Gareth Pursehouse leaves his home. He travels 51 miles from Playa del Rey to the Hollywood Hills. He knows Amie's address. At 8:52 p.m., as Amie is enjoying her night out on the town, Gareth is captured on Ring camera footage from Amie's neighbor's house. He's on the neighbor's property. He's wearing gloves, and he's moving toward Amie's house. At 9 p.m., Amie's male roommate is asleep in his first-floor bedroom. He awakens, hearing what sounds like a dish breaking. Assuming Amie made the noise, he goes back to sleep. February 14th turns into February 15th. At 1:02 a.m., Amie sends her last text message. It's to a friend of hers with whom she will soon be traveling overseas. He's telling her about a restaurant they need to go to there. Approximately 8 minutes later, Amie's roommate hears a thud that wakes him up again. Out of his sleepy fog, he realizes that Amie is getting attacked. She'd warned him about an unhinged ex after the event at the Marriott. The roommate hears Amie screaming, asking her attacker to stop. The roommate shouts up to the attacker, "Leave her alone!" The roommate, however, cannot locate his cell phone. Try as he might to find it, it's nowhere to be seen. At 1:11 a.m., Ring camera footage captures the roommate running to a neighbor's house for help. Unfortunately, the neighbor doesn't answer the door. The roommate then tries another house, but has the same problem. No one wants to answer the door at this late hour. Miraculously, the roommate spots a man walking down the street. He approaches the man and asks to use his cell phone to dial 911. The man agrees. Finally, at 1:14 a.m., the roommate gets through to the 911 operator. When first responders arrive on scene, they find the French doors leading into Harwick's home shattered. That must have been what the roommate heard breaking at around 9 p.m. when he first awoke. Tragically, they also find Amie's broken body on the concrete outside below her Romeo and Juliet balcony. She's barely breathing. Her pelvis is shattered. Doctors at the hospital will soon discover that her brain and liver have sustained significant damage. At 3 a.m., Amie Harwick dies. The coroner determines that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to her head and upper body. He also notes that there was evidence of manual strangulation. Gone from this world is this brilliant, vibrant young woman who was in the prime of her life. The loss to her family and friends is unfathomable. When crime scene investigators later arrive at the home, they find a smear of blood on the French doors and a blood stain on the floor. The blood turns out to match Gareth Purshouse's DNA. Busted. When detectives find a syringe, they assume it's filled with heroin. It's only later when chemists at the FBI test the material that they realize the syringe had been filled with a poisonous dose of nicotine. The authorities arrest Gareth Pursehouse for suspicion of murder at around 4:30 p.m. on Saturday, February 16, 2020, in Playa del Rey. Detectives later pieced together a scenario of what they believe went down. Again, this is all allegedly because Gareth Purshouse's trial is ongoing at this point, although a verdict is expected this next week. Per the detectives, Gareth broke into Amie's home at around 9 p.m. There, he laid in wait for her return. He came armed with a syringe filled with a lethal dose of nicotine. Who knew nicotine could be injected into a human being to take their life? All of this spells premeditation. The detectives believe Gareth grabbed Amie once she was inside her home and then put his hands around her neck. Amie, at 5 feet 5 inches tall and 118 pounds, was no match for the then 41-year-old Gareth, who stands 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighs 230 pounds. When the unexpected voice of a male downstairs pierces the night air, screaming at him to stop, Gareth is startled. That's when he decides to drag Amie to the third-floor balcony. From there, he throws the woman he claimed to love over the edge. At Gareth's trial for Amie's murder, his defense attorneys argue that seeing Amie Harwick at the event in January sent him into a deep, debilitating depression that he was not able to overcome. They say to the jury, quote, "The evidence will show that running into her at that event sent him into a thick fog of depression and made him feel that the only way he could get relief from that pain was to go and talk to her. The evidence will show he never intended on killing her," end quote. The defense also tells the jurors that Gareth did not throw Amie over the balcony, but rather that she ran to the railing, attempted to climb over it to get away from Gareth, and was unsuccessful and fell. The defense does admit, however, that Gareth, quote, "set a chain of motions into action that led to Amie's death." So the defense is not denying that Gareth Pursehouse broke into Amie's house and confronted her, but they are claiming she basically caused her own death by trying to climb over the balcony edge. In fact, they showed a photo of Amie wearing a black lace bodysuit and posing on the balcony's edge. They then tried to argue that she had a, quote, "certain comfort level with the balcony railing," end quote. They also claimed that Gareth broke into Amie's house strictly to talk to her, and his plan was to use the syringe with nicotine in it on himself and not on Amie. Apparently, the syringe was never used. The defense said that Gareth had ample opportunity to use the lethal dose, but didn't do so. Note that the defense rested its case without calling any witnesses. A friend of Amie Harwick's named Robert Koshland told News Nation last week that he was surprised by the defense's legal strategy. He said, quote, "I definitely thought they were going to present something. I know that the angle they were leaning toward was completely different from what they postulated during the preliminary hearing that I also testified in, but when they didn't present a case, I was shocked. I think everyone was shocked." End quote. Mr. Koshland took the stand last Wednesday and testified that Amie Harwick had told him that anything happened to her, it would be Gareth. Note that if Gareth Pursehouse is found guilty, he could be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. That seems a just sentence for a guy who so callously and painfully took Amie Harwick's life, allegedly. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories.
I like surprising people, and even when I'm being introduced, like with my current partner, people will say, "Oh, nice to meet you. Are you an actress trying to make it in LA?" I'm like, "Oh no, actually I do this." And they're like, oh my gosh.
An LA therapist